So this is the Nephew SIG Release Meeting for October 2nd, 2023. Let's go to the agenda items. The first one is regular weekly updates. So I guess this is Bala's.
Yes, Stephen, I up that. So if I look at our board, which I'm gonna paste right here, so I just want to remind that I'm gonna change the sprint today to sprint 2, end of day. Just put the board, but looking at the board where we are, we we have one more month before our hardening sprint. Assuming we'll give only one hardening sprint starts, and I'm also told by Gurgly from Nokia that he may join us this week in our SIG automation meeting, and he may help us in some documentation stuff as well. But looking at that, wherever we are we are in a similar situation as R1. That's the one thing that's concerning.
Right.
So I think just looking at obviously we'll know more information about this week's SIG automation. Last week's when we discussed, obviously we're making progress on the OAI, both on the RAN and the other side, and I suggested to make PRs into the RAN side onto our repo, and Sagar is making some progress. And then there is the interface changes that Wim suggested. That's going to be the foundational aspects for all of this. I think that's merged, I guess. If not, I think that's merged, right, Wim?
Not yet. The API is not merged yet. There was an issue with the generate API, but I told them how to fix it. I'm not sure. I'll check what is the status, but it was not on Friday.
Okay, cool. So we'll do the actual Scrum line by line in the automation meeting. But what I'm saying, Stephen, is maybe I think thanks. I think John, I see John also here. Hi, John. So I'm just considering. Considering we have 1 month, and after that hardening, where we could do some integration and documentation stuff. So I think November 15th seems a little bit tight at this point of time.
Yeah, especially because I think a few of us will be busy for next week.
Yes, we are busy. Yes, travel, and some of us are traveling, and also the logistics with the summit and stuff.
Yeah, I unfortunately I would think for a few of us anyway, this week is kind of burned because of that.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I came in a minute late, but so I think our options, from what it sounds like you're talking about, is release date. And our options are changing scope or changing date.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking right now? Like, I thought we sort of, the plan of record was not to change date, only change scope.
Yeah, because I think we're advocating the release train mechanisms. Something made it, we release anyway. Release whatever we have.
Yes. So actually, I like that idea in principle, but
in reality,
for R2, do we have at least the one big item is OAI, RAN, and core. And then obvious technical depth items we can always debate. How much you will fix in a particular release. Some of the fixes are already been done, including the API changes. So I think we have. So the main delivery item is that, and also the changes that Wim did, which is going to be foundational. The multi-vendor aspect, where making the API changes, that's already there, because that's gonna act as a foundational change. So at this point of time, if OAI core is there, if RAN is not there, would that be okay? Or we need to have those questions. At least one of them needs to be there. In my case, obviously, core is in a much better state because Sagar had already started working on that. So I think that's where we need to decide whether we need to do that, or we need to move the date, which is again. Yeah.
So I have an opinion on this, but I'll let Liam and Wim have their hands up.
Liam's next.
Yeah, I think if we say we're going to have our biannual releases, if that's of twice a year, or rather than once every 2 years, but every twice a year, we should stick to that. And really, I think the reality is, but after the summer, there just wasn't enough time to get a lot of content into R2. So my view would be we should focus on sort of going through the code, maybe tidying up what we can tidy up. Just try and make it a little bit more resilient or robust. And maybe if we can get one or two small things over the line, that'd be great. And then plan for a more substantial release then with R3. Like for example, even with the Argo config stuff we were looking at, yeah, we think it can be done, but there's no way we're going to get it into R2.
Yeah.
And I think also for the likes of me and Fikru, we're just looking at the code, getting to know the code, getting to know the development environment. We can use that in R2 to help us with that, and maybe get in, increase code coverage, maybe a few small fixes. That's my
so right now it seems like consensus is we're not changing the November 15th day. We'll start the integration cycle anyway after the sprint. And then
let's hear from everybody, and I mean it'll be up to the
go ahead, Vin. You next.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be okay to change the date a little bit, but not longer than, let's say, mid-December or something like that. But I see the reason is also, I mean, I've taken a bit of a different position now, because it's like Liam said, we have to onboard more people, right? So the more people who are familiar with the code, and it seems that this takes time, whether we like it or not. And so, but that's, I think, more future. I think for the future, it would be better for all of us that we have more people who understands the code and can contribute to this. So that's, and as such, what you see, it takes longer than if you would do it yourself, right? But on the other hand, I think it would be, it's useful for the team. So, and given that, I think what we should do is say, okay, what are the key things we need to get in, right? And then based on that, make a decision. I think that's how I look at it. But I would be okay to slip a little bit, is what I'm trying to say. But at least that we agree on the key parts that we want to have included.
Right. I do want to say that for me, the operator team, we lost two main contributors. We lost two of the major contributors for this cycle. So it's actually, that's the flip side of the argument too. But I'm not saying we should do everything, but I'm just saying, that was kind of disappointing. Anyway, go ahead. Right. Vish is next.
No, I think John was next.
Oh, really? I thought you were next. I saw your hand up first.
But John,
Okay.
Yeah, I started. I mean, that's fine. Thank you, Vish. I mean, I'm kind of going to echo what Wim said, and I've started a list here, and maybe we need to have this discussion in the group tomorrow, but or Wednesday, whenever it is. But as I see it, there are a few things that are important to me to be able to get in. At least one of the OAI, RAN, or core, ideally both. The API changes around multi-vendor and like the reduction of hard coding configs, things like that you guys were just talking about. Removing the Git dependency is really important because, for example, we couldn't do a distribution of it, in our product if we wanted to with that dependency there. I want to update the ports to the latest release, which has some major bug fixes, and they might have functional impact because it reduced the amount of watch events going out. And then the repo reorganization, and the follow-on opinionated distributions, which is like the open source, I'm calling it now open source nephew on GCP. There's an open source nephew on OpenShift, or just nephew on OpenShift, whatever you want to call it. And there's our sandbox one. And at least those three, and that repo reorganization is kind of a dependency for that. So as well as the updated port release for the GCP one, because there's some features in there. So those, to me, off the top of my head, are the critical things to get in. I think that we have a chance of getting all of those things in, even for the November 15th, if we scoped it down to that. But I'd be curious to hear how the things are going elsewise.
I guess that's the big question, where now we can, the confidence levels that we can land those things by November 15th, given that KubeCon sandwich in the middle, as Victor just pointed out.
Yeah, there's NephioCon and KubeCon sandwiches, both in the middle.
Oh, we have KubeCon too. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So Vish, go ahead, and after that I have some
Yeah.
this thing to John's.
Okay, so I mean, I want to say some generic things, which we also some lessons learned from our R1 too, right? In general, couple of things that can help improve. I mean, I'm sure everybody will agree, and nobody is going to disagree here, right? We need to probably firm up our acceptance criteria. We need to actually make sure we spend some effort on firming up some of those, right? Like our user stories, probably our scope and all the stuff. That is what is going to keep confidence, basically, right? Because for lack of a plan, I mean, this is again me speaking from my experiences over years working in a product group, right? When you have a release, and sometimes I don't think we need to release anything into production, but at least to actually have it a certain date, there are certain assumptions if we made, we should probably call it. Like, I feel that, some of us are working like, not me, I don't think I am, like working 60-hour weeks to make some of these things happen. You need to call that out also and to say that, yeah, we are making those kind of assumptions in order to hit this kind of, dates, which may not always be possible to do, So
I don't think we want people to be doing that. I think that personally, I'm not doing that now. Right for the month or so before R1, I had long hours, but and I don't think I need to do that for R2, hopefully. But
yeah, and also whenever we get time, whenever we get extra time, what happens is we go off and introduce scope, which has not been reviewed. The scope has not been planned, and it has not been reviewed to call out any risks or any of those things. Some project management kind of things that needs to come into place. Right. Bala, looking to you for help here. So,
you just reminded me, Vish, there is one other piece of scope that I do think is important to try and get into R2, and I would be willing to push the date for it, which is at least in the sandbox environment, the dynamic network config. So we get rid of those hacks in the EDEs and the exercises.
Okay. Yeah, this is
talk about increasing scope.
Yeah. So I mean, it tends to happen, right? Because in our minds, this has happened to me. I'm guilty of doing this too in my past life. But then when you are made responsible for a release to go out with documentation and everything, then you will start thinking about this. These small things will add up, and then you probably have only one person knowing what needs to be done. It doesn't actually, you're unable to contribute, sort of a thing. So that is why I was like, early on trying to get multiple reviewers to actually review and approve. Those kind of things actually put you on the more practical phase. It'll actually, you are not actually doing something which is artificial or which is like a one-time thing that you go off, you've taken that Red Bull and you hit it. You can't continue to take Red Bull, drink it, and, eat this kind of things. That is my, very generic things that I'm saying here at this point of time. Please keep those in mind,
Yeah, we don't want heroics in general.
Yeah, Vish, great points. Yeah, definitely. We should. I think we are discussing the right things here, and also in terms of the scope. John, I mean, that was exactly the thing I had in my mind too. Your original list of things, the minimum ones. But I didn't consider the internetworking, multi-cluster networking that you said. That was it was not in my view of MVP for the R2. It could be.
I feel like it limits our ability to do nice demonstrations, but it's probably not 100% critical. But I would really like to see it.
Okay. So
by the way, I have it. By the way, as I said, it's working. What I'm still working on is the way to integrate it into the whole system. So there's a lot of changes all over the place. So I'm going step by step. But last week I was traveling again. Yeah. Plus, there is one thing that I'm solving right now is that in order to do multi-cluster networking, you need so the one thing is we need access to the clusters and stuff like that, right? Actually in the reverse direction. So today we go top down. I need to understand which pods are what is running inside of the cluster. So I have the reverse, which I have working, by the way. So it's working. But so what for example, I need to have a cluster name inside of the cluster, right? So I use the config map to provision it, right? So you see, there is a gazillion of, I touches everything almost.
Wow.
But so I have it working. The problem is it touches a lot of stuff, because in essence you want to route in between clusters, so you need to know the IP address of each site, right? Where what is residing. I don't even at the moment, I'm wondering about NAT and stuff like that. But what I see is that, so I think I have a very simple thing to do the interconnection, but to be able to get the information to do so, that's where you need inter-cluster communication to figure it out. And that's where, so what I'm doing basically is I'm collecting. So like, that's why I said, Stephen, at some point I gave you I asked you the question, why did we build a gRPC service for the Edge Watcher, right? And the Watcher agent? Why not just listen to the API server directly? Because you basically get all the information from there. So there is, and I need that in order to convey the IP address from one pod to the other side, right? To be able to I built, and I use VXLAN for the time being. So to be able to create VXLAN tunnel, so I need to know IP address on one side, and I need to know the IP address of the other side. And actually, I need the IP address of the node, not on the pod.
Well,
right.
So that was seed code. So I would have to admit, getting it on Google infrastructure was simpler. We can create a VPN link where the pod IP address are propagated by the VPN router to the other side.
Yeah.
So obviously it's going to be a little different to do it that way.
And for example, so it has a whole. So I would love to do a presentation with you guys to explain all the things. For example, I also will need a load balancer. So today we only have a load balancer IP on the management cluster. Now I need to be able to interact with the workload clusters. So I need a load balancer IP there, right?
So this sounds like more than what I'm thinking of. Like I'm sort of thinking of, so sounds like this is a particular solution to how you would implement intercluster networking with VXLAN and all of these things. I was sort of thinking that we would have a way to provision, like right now we run some scripts which provisions things on different nodes. So what I was imagining was an operator that runs on each node, and I think Red Hat might have one of these, like that manages VLANs or something, right? Or there was something Alexi was talking about at one point, like, and so it's KRM based. We deliver the KRM to the cluster like we do other things, and it provisions things, and sort of it puts it on the way we construct our packages to like claim the VLAN index and claim the IP address, and
that's the easy part, John. That's the easy part.
That Alexis thing was a tunnel over some DNS lookup, I thought.
No, but that's yet another thing, guys. We are confusing.
This is the service layer. So what Wim's talking about is it's just routing.
It's really basic infrastructure, because that's actually layer 7 proxy is what he's doing, which none of our workloads will work through that for the multi.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. Actually, I was talking about we were talking about an operator.
No, but John, that I have, right? So the VLAN thing is easy. The problem is the following, right? So let me explain what the problem is. So today, what we do in our scripts, the first thing is so first of all, we wire each of these clusters in between, right? So we create a VE pair in each of the cluster to basically build each one, right? That's I'm replacing that with a VXLAN tunnel, which is dynamic. So the problem is also that these tunnels get instantiated during the provisioning time, and it's a one-shot thing, and it's not dynamic at all. So basically, you create those interfaces; they are wired up, and you cannot change it. So you cannot add, you cannot remove. So that's That's why you have this VXLAN tunnel. So that's the reason why to do this dynamic things, because I'm of the opinion you should be able to add workload cluster, delete workload clusters, scale it out, scale it in, and whatever you want to do.
So,
and then
so today,
and the system will follow that automatically, right?
Right. So,
one dumb question. Sorry, John. So does it have to be done at? Sorry, Wim. It's a very dumb question from me. Does it have to be done at layer 2? That's why you're considering VXLAN?
It's a wire, right? So even today it's a wire, because for example, sometimes we want to support LACP and stuff like that. So if you want to do all of that, you will have to do it at layer 1.
Right. So here's my concern, right? Is like if I look at if I look at GKE, right? So GKE has a way you can create VPCs in Google Cloud, and we have no visibility into what technology is being used there. So it's done at the management layer. You say, I have this VPC and it spans across these regions. I have this VPC and it spans across these regions. And then I can create a pod that attaches to those VPCs. And I don't have to worry about any of this intercluster networking. It's actually already taken care of for me. And so similarly, right, we could have an operator that sits on top of a top of rack switch, or sits on top of some switch router spine thing or something, right? Some aggregate switch that is activating and reconfiguring that switch to, rewire with VLANs or whatever it is. If you've got a node that trunks, I don't think we know.
So John, So John, like the thing with the VPCs, right, which is a very specific thing for GKE, right?
Yeah.
So this will only work for GKE, right? Because that's where you do multi-networking. So the architecture that I have allows you to do that, okay? You have to, the thing is you have to have a provider, but I didn't want to limit ourselves to only do GKE. We wanted to support kind clusters, we want to support on-prem, we want to support all of these things, right? And that's where so I built it to be able to support all of these things.
Okay. So when you're talking about the VXLAN, you're talking about a specific provider that fits within the architecture as opposed to the overall architecture. Okay.
And that's, if you say I have a provider that is basically GKE, it will not do that. It will create a VPC, and you just have to implement the VPC construct. But if you want kind clusters, there is nothing, right? So there's no such thing. So that's where the VXLAN comes into play.
Kind clusters makes a lot of sense. Yes. Okay. Okay. I was trying to understand how it all fit. So we have
so it's basically, it's layered with providers. So you have a provider plugin, right? And I'm doing right now the VXLAN one, because that's what we have for kind, or that's what I did. But so there will be, once we have the multi-networking with GKE, you will basically change the network, will be a VPC, and then you can do that side.
Okay.
So I raise my hand in this context. John, if you have something to go, please finish your thought.
So I guess my question would be, is there a way we can start to deploy this in layers, as opposed to, so like maybe without a provider, there's no point, but which is maybe where you are. Like, I'm trying to figure out how we can, and maybe we need to have a presentation first, but like how we can distribute the load somewhat, right? So that it's not all on you, Wim. Like we could, if we can get some sort of initial cut of the framework, the architecture in, then other people can maybe help with the VXLAN implementation. But like, I don't know the details. So,
so John, the implementation is done, right? It's done.
Okay. Okay.
So what is the challenge is to integrate it into the whole system, right? So the thing is, because I need an IP address, I need config maps, I need IP addresses on the workload cluster to be able to, I need to set up a server. So it's all of that. And the problem is so I can do two things, right? I can basically create an operator myself and do it hard-coded, but I decided not to do so. I wanted to be data-driven. So that's what I'm focused on right now, is to install this just out of the blue, without you have to fill out some parameters and it will auto-install, and I don't write specific code for it. That's what I'm tackling right now. Because if we can solve that, we can even solve bigger issues that we still have in R1, because there's a lot of stuff which is hard-coded at the moment.
Yeah.
So if I can solve that part, I can also solve a bunch of things. So I'm focusing right now on making this data-driven installation to try to solve that properly. And as such, then the installation will become easy. And I think we can even extend it to solve a number of, let's say, hard-coded installations that we have today.
Okay.
And for example, we have like our load balancer IPs. There's a bunch of stuff that is hard-coded in our packages today.
Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Yeah, I guess how do we? The question is, well, I guess we got into this discussion based on the discussion of scope.
Yeah. Sorry.
Right?
Yeah.
We kind of
Yeah, I mean, it's a good discussion. Yeah, we should have it.
I mean,
we have time.
transport networking automations for the test bed for sure. It's first in the purview.
Yeah.
What we're supposed to do here anyway. So
I think, Wim, I think when you started the conversation, I had some questions, but I think you preempted by answering some of it. But basically, I was thinking that, hey, are we doing all this only to support the sandbox installation, right? Because at some point of time, the sandbox kind clusters may not be necessarily what we want for every scenario, right? I was thinking that we also need to get to another level where we are able to bring up a couple of VMs, just like how we bring up a couple of kind clusters. We might want to be able to bring up a couple of VMs. And each of those VMs, we actually have some sort of like a cube ADM cluster that gets installed. And we want to be able to use those also for certain scenarios. I mean,
yeah, that works also in that scenario, Vish. It's also working in that scenario. So I've made it really flexible.
Well, and then speaking of the SIG release, we definitely need to have something that works for an integration, automated integration test. And for now, this is kind.
Yeah, this is kind.
So if your thing doesn't work in kind, it's not gonna, has no chance in hell it'll be dropped because of integration test failures. So right now,
for example, I can with this right now, I can integrate the GKE cluster on one end with the kind cluster on the other end. It works as well, by the way.
Right.
Okay, nice. That's because it's Go ahead, John.
So we do have that, Vish. So we have there is an OpenShift. So the way that the current docs, not the R1 docs, but the current like head docs are structured, we restructured into there's different opinionated installations or distributions, we could call them, for lack of a better term. And one is the sandbox, and one is OpenShift, and one is GKE, which is the one I'm working on. Now it's not done yet, but it's getting close, and that I want to finish it for R2. So you'd be able to create. I don't know if it's going to be possible. My goal for R2 is to be able to do a full free 5GC and hopefully OAI core on GKE using. We don't have Multus. We have something else that's alternative to Multus. So using that. Now, that's my goal for R2. So it's covering that idea of there's different deployment, bring your own cluster type of deployment scenarios that we want to do. And there's an issue out there for somebody to create one for EKS and one for anything and everything, right? But right now, we've had people actually contribute to is the sandbox and OpenShift and GCP. Or GKE.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing, Liam, I know you have hands raised, but this is related. So, do you think bringing one of the multi-cluster networking folks into this discussion is helpful?
No, see, Bella, I looked at like what Red Hat did and what Cilium did. I looked at all the things. There is nothing that comes to that level that we are using at the moment. Okay. So I've looked at all the different flavors. I even worked with some of the Google guys who started building pieces of this themselves. So I'm reusing some of that code. But so the issue right now is no longer the interconnection. The issue is really how to do the installation and do it in a way that it's flexible. That's basically what and I don't want to build code, very specific code to do it. I want to solve it in a generic way. That's basically what I'm focused upon right now.
Yeah, I think one of you mentioned, either you or John mentioned about a layered approach in the sense like, if you already have a cluster out there and you want to install the NFO components and other things on top of that, that is something that we need because, I mean, at least I was trying to, I know Alexi also is doing it. but I was at least trying to bring up a SNO OCP, and I wanted to go off and try to install some of these Nephio components, right? I want to be able to reuse some of our Ansible scripts where I'm able to point to that, and I want to be able to do that. It should not make an assumption that it's a kind cluster out there or any of those things are needed. I should be able to come up with any of the playbooks out there or the scripts out there. I should be able to point to one of my clusters and be able to install some of these components. That is at least what I'm thinking in my mind as a next step to do. And it might surface some issues probably where we come back and try to either open issues and fix them.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So Liam,
next.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Are you thinking R2 or R3 for this?
I think that was kind of the discussion, right? Like ideally, I'd love to see it in R2, but if it's bigger than I'm imagining, then it may not be feasible. Like,
well, we probably about even to get testing going on this would be, probably by the time as well. Probably just to get everybody to understand it and so on. We're really kind of up against it now, time-wise, I think.
Yeah. See, if I solve the generic installation issue, right, then I think you can start testing next week in theory, right, in a branch. But because the code, so there are already people using it for other scenarios, irrespective of me. So which are not even Nokia, outside of Nokia. But the thing is, it's all the pieces to install it is the work, and I'm actually implementing something, so I would love to finish it if this works, and that would also be a good thing potentially for us in general.
I'm just thinking about the process of bringing it in, Vim, and getting the code reviewed and that.
Sure. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. If it is too descriptive, I think
it's a big item.
Yeah, it's a big item. So that was my understanding too. So there's couple of other things. Then we'll go back to the scope. John, one other big thing is the topology controller that is in our board that's being worked on. Stephen, do you think?
That one adding R2, I don't think it's a problem. Yeah.
So that will be part of R2.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would integrate that into integration test. Obviously, it's one of the example entry points that folks can use, or it's just an example in general.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing actually. I mean, having that thing is a story by itself. In my view, you can say, look how our northbound may look like. Like it's a beautiful integration.
If we have enough test resources, we can even try to have 2 SMFs and 2 groups of UPF connected to them. And then for 3.5GC, we only give specific UPFs for this particular SMF. But let's try to see if the test resources can handle this.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So John, probably we should wrangle the requirements. Then probably so between topology controller, OAI RAN/core, both, and the tech debt issues that John discussed, and the multi-vendor API changes that we have already done is underway, like the Vim done, and with the documentation changes. So if we consider those, can we hit November 15th is the question that we need to answer. I think those are minimum in my view, especially since Stephen said that topology controller can also go, it's in the shape to go. And so I think if we make those as an MVP, then the question becomes, can we do those in next 1 month so that we can do the hardening in the first final sprint, going to TSC, etc. If not, what should we do? Yeah.
So I can answer for a few items. So Liam put in the chat, he thinks the Git thing is doable. The updated porch release is already in there in a PR, ready to be merged.
Yeah.
The repo reorganization, I think, is the next step, which will affect all our installation and stuff. That shouldn't be a problem. So in that sense, from the tech debt perspective, I think all of those things are like, and then the GCP installation, all that should be doable.
And just to add a few more items on the tech debt, sorry, John, since you're on the topic.
Yeah.
Rado has been doing the tech debt item on the release side, doing some CI/CD stuff. Those are also in line for the release as well. Yeah, I think those should be done in a month. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Rado is on the call. Probably he can speak on this.
Yeah, Rado just joined.
Yeah.
Not just joined about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, sorry for running late. I was swamped by other stuff.
Thank you for being here. So any questions for Rado or?
No, I have a question for Rado later, but after this topic, yeah.
Okay.
So then the open items in my mind are, Stephen said the topology is in.
Yeah.
The docs, it sounds like I saw Timo on. It sounds like we're going to get some help with that. So
yeah,
do we see November 15th as a feasible timeline for getting docs reorganized and improved?
I think we'll see. I think Gergely said he's going to join our SIG automation meeting this week, so probably we'll get some answer from him.
Okay. So
He's also from Nokia.
Timo is here, right? You're talking about Timo.
Well, whoever. I mean, I thought Timo. I think it's Timo was organizing it, getting some folks to help. So I think.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, then the API changes piece. That has implications all the way down into the operators, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we see that
So
as
Ronak was one of the developers, so he was going to take that on. And I asked, so there is a few changes in specialization that has to be done, and I reached out to Akash to help for those.
Okay.
So
maybe tomorrow people will be at the meeting. We can go over it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think all the work items are defined for that. They're all defined. They're all on the board. Changes to the API, changes to the functions, and changes to the controllers/operators. I think it sounded like that those things could be done. I think there was not much of a red lights on any of them.
Actually, for 6.3 perspective, my big question is, I think John mentioned that it's going to be outside of Kind cluster. You also want GKE and or GCP and
those would not need to be in the testing. No, those don't need to be in the.
Okay, if it's part of integration testing, it's going to be a lot of effort.
No.
Yeah.
Those distributions would need to. No.
Because we don't need to certify or anything like that. I guess right now it's like that's to work on this platform.
Not at this time. I think Sandbox should still be our only CI.
Okay.
Maybe eventually we'll add CI in those environments, but not.
I would imagine we have to make sure that it works across the platforms that we supported. Yeah.
So that leaves, John, the two big ticket items were RAN and code. I think my understanding is good progress is being made, even though both of them are not in our repo. So I think I suggested we bring in the RAN code into our repo as soon as possible, sooner than later, even if it is not perfect. It can be iterated.
The one issue that I see, Bala, is the API design. We have to go through that ASAP.
Yeah.
That's going to be, I don't know where we land, or I have no view yet on what it will look like. But you see today that these parameters are not only run specific, right? So they need to be also consumed by the core, and they need to be consistent. So I believe that could have implications on other places potentially. So that's the item that for me, I see a little bit of a risk in the radio. Is we can do something. We can do a hack and basically say, okay, cut through and go for it, and then we do the same thing on all the other ones. But if we want to do it a little bit, my proposal is to at least discuss it to see what would be the right way forward, and then maybe say, okay, for R2, this is what we do if we cannot do the full thing.
Yeah, I think defining the API will be the important detail there, but like the whole idea of the package or the resource injection is that you define the resource once in the management cluster associated with a given topology, and then you can inject it.
So that's my big question too. The 3GPP stuff that you input one time, it get propagated into all the things that are relevant. That part is missing to me.
Okay.
Yes, and that's not
yeah,
defined properly yet. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
The other big scope item that came to mind for me was UI. Right now, we haven't discussed any changes to the UI in R2. I had some things that would be nice to have, but we have to decide whether we have the resources to do them. Last for R1, we had help from several folks at Samsung. I don't know if they're still available. They're familiar with the code. It would be great to get some help. The piece, though, they didn't work on this sort of thing. They worked on editors and viewers. One thing I would like to do is potentially expose the Backstage Kubernetes plugin for the management cluster, at least, if not all the clusters, directly in the UI. It just would make it so that you don't have to switch between kube control commands and the UI as often. But I know like some folks have used the UI pretty extensively, so I'd love feedback too on what we can improve there. There's plenty. It's a very rough UI, right? So there's plenty we could do. I don't know if much would be done for R2, but I just want to raise the topic and not leave it hanging.
Yeah, we can definitely contact Ganesh and others, right, who helped us in the first release.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can probably touch base with him and verify what are their plans, and
Okay.
we can help us.
Well, thanks.
So the other thing, so the current state of the UI doesn't have any authentication, right? Like, I mean, we are not using.
No, it does not. Well, in the sandbox installation, it does not. Like if you look at my GCP one, you go and you have to log in as a with your Google account, and then it uses your credentials. So yeah, so it does use that. And so with the OpenShift one, Alexei has it tied into the OpenShift, at least into OpenC. I think he was going to try and tie it into the OpenShift management platform authorization system, but I don't know if he had a chance to finish that. But
I think
yes.
he did that. I think he finished that. Yeah.
Okay, so we do have authentication. Now our authorization models are pretty loose at this point, so there's definitely work to do there. But yeah, right now we do have it working.
Yeah, I think we will consider the security as a whole later, I guess. So so I think even these items, even if we let's say multi-cluster is not in, let's say UI is nice to have. Even with this, I'm getting a feeling November 15th may be tight, John. So the reason being, sorry, let me just get the door. Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, the reason being, I mean, the summit and the KubeCon in between, and then I know the key guys that we are seeing on the screen here will be busy with those as well. So I still have a feeling maybe we should take Wim's suggestion and move it to December 15th. Is what I'm thinking.
So that's fine. I'm okay with that. We can ask the TSC.
Yeah, we have to ask TSC.
I will be. I am on vacation from the 3rd to the 13th of December. So I need
come
to
back for 2 days.
I need to do by basically Thanksgiving.
Okay, got it. So why don't you? I suggest one thing. Why don't you take your laptop with your vacation and then?
Nope. Actually, I will take it in case I get stuck there, but it will stay in my suitcase. Ideally.
Sorry, John.
I made that mistake last year. I didn't bring my laptop, and I was in the Cayman Islands. I was like, "We should stay another week." I'm like, and I'll just work from here, but I didn't have my laptop. So
December 15th is a Friday.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, basically what I'm saying is, it looks like, see, next week, a summit, 2 days is gone. People are traveling. Then KubeCon, people are traveling, and there's a lot of days, we spent in traveling in the conference, creating the materials for conference presentations, things like that, in both the conferences. I mean,
yes,
so I have a feeling that we are running very tight. if we still
Okay.
keep the November 15th deadline.
So
Bala,
we should,
suggestion.
well,
I mean, this is something that most, companies do internally, right? I mean, this is something, Bala, if you do, it will be great. It'll be a great example to set, would be like, some of these things that you're calling out, in a release document for R2, if you can actually call them out, which can then be shared with TSC, it would be great. Even like calling out things like, hey, who are the developers that are going to be available for the R2 release, what the timeline would look like. This would be a very good precedent that you might set to help the later release managers coming in. If you can do that, then we can give that like, hey, this is what we can do, with this, or we need to move it out. So it would be good if you also want to reach out to any of us developers and ask us for a time commitment and any of these things. We can present this data and then ask for moving it out, basically, if it makes sense. I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely, Vish. That definitely makes sense. So I'm basically, my observation is based off of how the board is moving, and based off of how the interactions have been attending in the meeting. So that's where I'm based out of, and also our own experience. So, but your suggestion is very good. I'll also start doing that.
Because usually you need to have a plan,
yeah.
and the plan needs to be reviewed, and people need to be able to ask questions and call out and ask for risks and everything, even resource assignment and everything. And that's when we have a solid plan.
Yeah, I think in terms of the people, obviously we use the GitHub issues board as the source of truth, because that's where the issues are assigned, and that's where the things are committed. So yeah, Wim, so you're saying something, go ahead.
No, I think my take is a little bit, we are in orange flag, so the chances of moving is high, or there is a high chance probably, or a medium chance that we will move. But I think we should, if we move it right now, I have the feeling that the pace is even going to be lower than that. We have to move it again. So I rather keep the date for now and keep the pressure on a little bit, but keep it and raise as an orange flag that we might shift it something like that, if that's okay. Because if we loosen it, my feeling is that everybody loses it, and then we need to keep.
We do want to target a TSC meeting where we're going to ask for this. So if the chances are like, let's say 70% that we're going to be asked for a month, we have to target for TSC meetings where we'll raise that point.
Yeah, just another factor that comes into it then is for me it'd be better to go with what we have in November, because you use the November, December before the Christmas break to kind of get R3 in order, and then you have a good run at R3. But if you come back after the into year break and you haven't kind of your stuff laid out for the next break, then you're under pressure for R3. So if you have a little bit of a buffer in the R2, in that period after November the 15th, to say, okay, this is what we're going to take the infra, we're going to sort that intercluster stuff out. This is what we're thinking. Ready to go then after sort of 2nd, 3rd of January. I don't know about other places, but here everything shuts down for the last 2 weeks of December. And if you have a little bit of time before that, you kind of get kind of a prep time for the R3, and then you have 4 solid months then on R3.
Yeah, so for our one, we tag release in mid-July, and then the announcement didn't even go on until like end of August. So there is a little bit of buffer. But then again, December. You said at the end of December, that buffer just naturally happened. Anyway, if we tagged it, everyone we off.
Yeah, I think to Wim's point, probably I can warm up to maybe Kandan on the side channel, then say this may be coming and not make it. Let's shoot for 15th now. Let's see where we do let's wait for one more sprint and see where we are.
I think having a November 15th checkpoint is fine, but doesn't mean that to make the November 15th checkpoint, we actually take a couple of, we still make sure our review process or whatever that needs to be done, our rigor process doesn't get loosened up, or just as.
I think that's a good point. I think also Liam's Stephen's point about when the announcement goes out, like I don't think LF is going to announce it on Christmas Day, right? Like, it's not going to get announced probably till January. But we should have that discussion with them about when the announcement goes out. But I did want to say, Liam's point is really good, because we don't want to push it so far that we don't have any, that we end up coming back in January, and then we take another 2-3 months to plan R3, and then we only have a week to do R3. So like, I don't know, we have to start planning R3 probably in parallel with finishing up R2.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things we raised in our SIG 1 meeting too today, John.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we have.
I do want to apologize to Rahul and others, because the compliance topic presentation is next week, and then we took up the entire meeting time.
Yeah. I
Without
think.
giving them any
Yeah,
time.
I think that the reason why. Okay, there is a compliance topic there. So
yeah, it's all Victor's topic, which is important, but then the compliance, because it's next week.
Yeah, next week.
The meeting's next week. I just want to know if there's anything that Rahul or others wants to talk about.
Yeah, I put that in.
Oh, you put it in. Okay,
yeah,
I didn't know who put it in. Hey,
yeah, I put that in because of this reason. Okay.
Okay.
So in the last ASC meeting, right? Kandan suggested that the part of that is he wants to attack it in two-pronged way. One is whether Nefio itself is compliant to certain things such as licenses, copyrights. That's what that point is what I brought up. Copyrights, licenses, ownership, things like that. The second thing he wanted to raise was he wanted to do, like what it means, mostly a future-looking stuff. What distribution is meant to be Nefio compliant. That means, like certification for Nefio, things like that. That's the thing he's going to tackle. So in the previous release meeting, we had requested Rado to come up with some material for the first part, the lay of the land for today, where we are in terms of copyrights and stuff, licenses, all those things. So that's why that's my request to Rado this amount of time to maybe 2 or 3 slides of lay of the land and what's our plan for R2. And then once we do that, we give it to Kandan. Probably we'll do a joint presentation for that particular topic. And in addition to that, obviously Rahul is here. Probably he's gonna give us some of the future-looking stuff. What the plan is. I think there's a separate meeting for that as well.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, John. Yeah.
So in Kubernetes, we call this conformance. The second thing you were talking about.
Yeah.
It's whether a given distribution conforms to the definition of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So this is one of my roles in the Kubernetes community is I approve those conformance tests. So we have a program, and it's actually administered by the CNCF. So they're sort of split into 2 parts. One is SIG architecture. We define the list of tests that a conforming distribution must be able to pass. And then CNCF evaluates any given distribution as to whether it can do that. They have a process for that. And then people they can't call their distribution Kubernetes unless it meets those conformance tests. Okay. So basically, for the most part, it's does it support these APIs, and do they behave in the expected way? And so I would imagine a similar thing for Nefio. And what we would do is put together a program, and we decide on what the APIs are that define this is Nefio. And there's mandatory APIs and there's optional APIs. In the Kubernetes environment, we only mandatory APIs are part of the conformance suite. So like we can have, that's an entire program we should probably initiate. And I think, this is super important when we get, hopefully, people just creating distributions as part of the products that are part of Nefio, for us to be able to keep a clear expectations for users. So the idea is around, like, if Nokia publishes a package, that says that says this works with Nefio, then I should be able to pick that package up and run it on Google's hosted Nefio and Red Hat's hosted Nefio and Amazon's hosted Nefio, and it should work. And so if Nokia's. So if Nokia can't make, if they can't publish a package that says that, then it devalues, right, what the promise of Nefio is. So
yeah,
that's I think that's going to be a big project to make that happen.
Yeah,
And
that's the true problem too for us, right? So there's also the vendor packages, the vendor onboarding, they have to be conforming. And then
yes,
also,
so I'd like a program that could evaluate people's packages and like, like basically run it through RCI effectively, right?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. I think probably, John, I think you should definitely provide this input to Kandan as well, because he's looking forward to this kind of thing to present in that particular talk. So, so Rado, on the first part of this complaint stuff, where we are, the lay of the land, do you be able to come up with a couple of maybe
I
two,
think
three
it's about
slides?
7 or 8 p.m. for Rado. So
yeah,
I think we asked him last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I will make some slides, and I will just send you to review earlier.
Okay.
Speaking of licensing, compliance testing, I've just spotted in Proud that Fossology test is failing. I've just pushed the fixes for Nefio and API repositories. That's respectively 406 and 52. Pull requests. So when you guys have some time, please approve. And LGTM, this will fix two failing tests on hanging PRs on those repositories. So I had those change in a base image for the Fossology scan done upstream. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, for the slides and for presentation, I will probably tomorrow send out something just to confirm that's the thing we want to show, and yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Rada. Yeah, I appreciate it. And Rahul, please, any of the future-looking stuff, if at all you want to contribute to that session as well, please let us know.
Surely. Thank you.
Thanks, Rahul. Yeah.
Liam.
Yeah, John.
Actually, John's hand is stale, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, that's stale.
So Liam.
No, I just wanted to ask about this discussion thing on GitHub. I know we talked about it before. So it's just from the stuff, a plethora of channels. I would suggest we open another channel. I don't know if it's wide or not, but I thought maybe for questions on, say, coding things or whatever, we could, rather than kind of doing it on Slack, it might be better on something like that. And it was a Tal was talking about that before.
It becomes more discoverable, it seems to me, if it's on GitHub. Like the Slack things will disappear after a while.
It seems to be only the admins can do it, and I think it's free if my Googling is correct. So
for
I'm just
Slack?
wondering if
Slack is definitely not free. Slack is very
no. This is GitHub discussions, Stephen.
Oh, I see.
We can create as many Slack channels as we want. We just don't have a retaining history from them.
Yeah, no, they don't. They buffer only for a period of time.
Now that we are part of LFN, are we not going to get the funding for the Slack channel?
So I asked Lucy that and said that not even LFN doesn't have the money to pay for Slack.
No.
Slack is ridiculous.
It's really that expensive. Yeah.
Slack is very
expensive. How much is it anyway?
So we are over. Probably, John. My request is in the next SIG automation meeting. Let's just define that scope properly and then take it from there.
I'm sorry, I missed. I just opened I just enabled discussions on the Nefio repo, if that's what we're talking about.
No. Sorry, I'm talking about since we are over time now. In this next SIG automation meeting, probably we will define that. We'll make that whatever scope definition we set today. We'll discuss in that meeting.
Okay. Yes. Great.
Yeah. Then probably and then.
Yeah, that should be. That should be the most important thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much,
Thanks,
everyone.
Rado, for joining. Take care. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, anyone. Bye.